We are here with another awesome mom that we get to interview. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about art and self-care. And I am so excited to hear more about this because I feel like that is such a hard topic for moms. It's hard to take care of yourself when you're taking care of kids and everybody else around. So this is Amber Fife, and she is an online watercolor instructor who helps worn out women regain their sparkle. That sounds amazing. By making time for creative care. With degrees in math and art, Amber found photography to be the marriage of the two since 2001. To deal with decades-long anxiety, Amber's healing began in 2016 as she returned to her artistic roots and made time to physically create on a regular basis. Finding so much success in her own life, Amber began Women Create Weekly in 2018, a blog and online membership to help women find themselves again through watercolor painting. Living on 4 acres in South Jersey woods with her 4 kids and professor husband and a variety of farm animals, Amber finds time for creativity amidst homeschooling, graphic designing, photographing, and all the other demands of life. You sound like a busy woman, Amber. Something we were wondering was, can you have that self-care time, but with your kids? Or like you can do it with, I don't know, that just sounds chaotic to me, just with my kids. But I don't know how old your kids are, but there's a range of different ages, I'm sure, with all these moms. But what's your suggestion that way? Can you still have self-care and have your kids with you?
That's a great question. I would say the first step would be to do a little self-assessment and see where you're at on a scale of 1 to 10 of how worn out are you? How stretched thin do you feel?
Okay.
If you're feeling like, I guess, which way would the number 10 be? Let's say number 10 is feeling awesome. Number 2 is feeling worn out. If you're feeling a 2, you're not going to go and do a glitter paint project with your kids because you're just going to want to go crazy.
Play-Doh. Play-Doh.
You send them outside to play.
Slime.
And you go color a little bit in your coloring book. So to gauge yourself where you're at, if you're like a 7 and you want to say, hey, let's try this, whoever wants to join me can join me, then yeah, sure, do that. But don't demand more of yourself than you have the reserves for. So that'll be my first response. I suggest most of the time I'm talking to women who are feeling that itch to find them to do that for themselves. And so they're at the lower end of that spectrum. And so we'll start with, you set the time aside for yourself and focus on this experience for yourself. Some of the other women that come are wanting their, like, taking that and then working with the grandkids to create what was successful for them and the family members that they really enjoy. I grew up creating right alongside my mom with all access to all her professional supplies. And I knew that I was like, the first thing I would describe myself in those schools things was I'm creative. That was the first thing I'd say, because she fostered that and she encouraged me and that sort of thing. And not as many people had that kind of experience with creating growing up. And so it's beautiful to see these women work into that of self-acceptance and exploration. And that's hard to do when you have complaining, whining, fighting children around you. So decide what kind of experience you need. And some moms are like, well, I can't do stuff without my kids at this stage. And, do whatever you can do at the stage you're at. But if you're feeling in that lower end of the spectrum of wanting to feed your soul, work that in so you can get that feeding. And then as you're feeling better, you have more of that to give, to have some of those kind of experiences with your kids, which are important too.
I love that. Yeah. And like, don't pull out the slime when you're not ready for a mess. Yes, I love that. Gauge where you're at and then decide what kind of project you can do if you have those littles at home that you can't really let them out of your sight. I like that a lot. Well, I don't know, how has self-care and art kind of benefited you the most? How do you think it could benefit our moms the most?
For me, I would say 2 answers: changing my internal dialogue and fostering a sense of possibility. And I'm making this up on the fly, so I might forget what those 2 are, but Changing that internal dialogue, if you track what your thoughts are throughout the day, you'll find that probably a lot of them are negative and aren't serving you. You're thinking they're serving you to keep you on course to what you need to do. And so some of the stuff we do inside my membership, like you want to flip those thoughts and rewalk those pathways in your brain to be shifting some of this, instead of, oh, I never do the laundry, to I focus on what's important and get it done if I need it. And just kind of shifting the way you're talking to yourself and about yourself. Because I used to have a really negative talk, and I still, it's involuntary. Those thoughts come. And so I would say that making time for self-care and creating has helped me shift that undertone of what that is running throughout the day. And the other piece of possibility is when you sit and you do something creative and then you see something else, instead of thinking I could never do that, or just getting discouraged when you see something, there's this sense of, maybe I can. And that can go towards, maybe I can remodel my bathroom. Maybe I can have patience with my child for this hard math problem. Like, it's just a sense of possibility that comes with accomplishing something and exploring yourself in this other way. It does affect everything else you do and how you show up in the other aspects. And I don't know, does that answer your question?
I love that. I think you've touched a lot on your thoughts about yourself. That's self-care, and that's the love you need. You need to tell yourself those things, like, yes, I can sit down and paint a bird. Because for me, that's not something I feel like, I could sit down and do. Or, you tell yourself, you have to tell yourself that you are good enough to do these things. And I think that I'm seeing now that I can transfer through art. I love that. I love that idea. We've been asking everyone we've interviewed, is there a personal story you can share of a time you felt less than perfect in your parenting journey and how it all worked out? And yet it all worked out, all the kinks worked out somehow.
Yeah, it's, I was mentioning before about when we moved here, that was my first break. And it was interesting is that at that time I would introduce myself as, I'm a photographer, and that was the first thing that I would say. And so to step away from that kind of identity piece, kind of left me at like, who am I? And like, what am I doing with my life? And what is motherhood? And how do I like, and it just threw me for a loop a little bit. And it took away the busyness that I'd been rushing through and satisfying my clients. And, when they're saying, you're wonderful and throwing money at you, that, that's really fun. But then when that was gone, it was like, I was kind of paralyzed by this overwhelming guilt of, I'm a bad mom. And that was my paradigm, that I was a bad mom. And I knew I wasn't hurting my kids and I wasn't screaming at them. But I just felt this, I'm not good enough. If my kids are fighting or misbehaving, it's because I'm not a good enough mom to handle it. And I'm not a good enough, I haven't taught them well enough. And all of those kind of guilt thoughts. And so the journey began to change with the internal dialogue, paying attention to those thoughts and shifting those thoughts. And there was a number of things over the last three and a half years that have helped me on personal development and growing and that sort of thing. But I think it really was taking the time. We moved here in the summer, and by like February, it was like, it's the middle of that dead winter time when life just stinks, yes. Typically, and just evaluating myself. And I was like, I need to start creating again. And so I would try to start to draw some stuff. And of course I wasn't as good as I was in college. And I wasn't as good as I was as a photographer. So it was really discouraging, but I kept playing and exploring and doing, and things started to lighten. Julia Cameron, the Artist's Way book, talks about writing morning pages where you just write, stream of consciousness writing. And I found that when I did that for the first time, it was like 2 weeks solid of all the negative thoughts that were running in my head. And after about 2 weeks, there was a shift. And I started to, I knew that all these things, these heavy things were safe on this paper if I needed to go get it, because I couldn't just not worry about it. So they were there on the paper if I needed them. And about 2 weeks, it shifted to start to be looking forward thinking of and hopeful, and kind of shift that. And being excited about what I was creating, and what if I this, and what if I this, and ooh, what about, and that sort of shifted. And so today I know I'm a loving, capable, talented mom, and I'm going to be there for my kids for their entire life and just love them to pieces. I'm confident and I'm hopeful. And I really believe that adding creativity in a thread in my life, I'm not spending like an hour a day painting. I would love to, so I could keep improving. Even a half an hour a week doing something, whether that's following a YouTube tutorial or coming to like a Zoom class with an instructor like me, or whether that's coloring in a book you got off Amazon, whatever it is, if you just do that on a regular basis, just things start to shift, and it's really beautiful. And we're not done. We're going to be continuing to change and grow for our whole lives. But it's really made the biggest difference.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I like the thought that once you get creative and you start doing these things, you think, well, what else can I do? What else can I do? If I can do this, what else can I do? And I like what you're preaching and teaching here. What would you say is your number one takeaway for our moms?
Create a life that you don't need a vacation from.
I love that. I actually just read that in a book.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I like that. You want to expand on that?
Sure. The first way I wrote it down was create a life you don't want to run away from, but I thought that sounded a little bit more extreme, because I don't want to run away from my kids, but I do want to escape from them sometimes.
You want a vacation every once in a while.
So I would say you can't pour from an empty cup, and finding ways to feed your soul in whatever way that it's going to be, scheduling in those regular times, and then keeping accountable for that. And so for the ladies that I help, knowing that we're going to see each other and the accountability, and that there's nothing outside, you just show up and we have fun and then it's over. It takes away the guilt and the overwhelm and the decision making. So however it's going to be, schedule it in and then follow through.
I love that. Thank you so much, Amber. You've given so many good little nuggets that I've needed today. And we're excited to have you on here, and we're so thankful for everything you've shared. Thank you.